Hello everyone, this is Logan589XP here for another episode of the Nin-Cast here on March 5th of 2021, and WandaVision has officially wrapped up. The final episode just released today on Disney+, and now that the series has officially come to a close, and yes, it really has come to a close, the final episode is literally called the series finale. Not season finale, series finale. I know that Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige have talked about, oh yeah, some of the series might get season 2s, but most of them are just supposed to be mini-series. Basically, movies that are split up into separate episodes. That's basically supposed to be the real idea behind the show. And yeah, so WandaVision is now officially done, and I'm here to give my thoughts on it. I don't want to start with the finale immediately, of course, because that just happened, but at the same time, that's also why I'd want to talk about it, because the finale just happened, so that naturally that's the one I would want to talk about the most. But before we jump into the finale, because the finale is, I think, a big part of whether or not you're going to like this series overall, or maybe more specifically, what you really bought into being on this show or not will determine how much you like this series in the end. Because as the finale approached, I could already feel that the finale is going to be a make or break for people. Either they're gonna like how it ends, like how it wraps up the story of WandaVision, Westview, the town, Agatha, all that stuff, or they're not gonna like it because X thing wasn't in it. And obviously, if this wasn't very obvious, this is going to be a spoiler-tastic discussion. So if you haven't seen the final episode, or if you haven't seen WandaVision in general somehow at this point, then, get off now. Get off this stream/video, because this is going to be uploaded after the fact as a proper video on the second channel alongside the other Nin-Casts as a part of Season 5. I was originally going to have this little, because obviously, as you can probably tell, this is called the Nin-Cast Live as opposed to just the Nin-Cast. Why? Because this is a little experiment I'm trying where I basically, stream one of these and then I upload it after the fact. A bit edited, probably, to cut out the beginning and end where, it's just like the be right back screens and the, stream is starting screens and stuff. But for the most part, I want to have this basically be as if it was a regular Nin-Cast video, just streamed, and I'd throw it up later. But enough about that. Let's go ahead and actually start from the beginning. So the very first, the first couple of episodes are very distinct, in my opinion, from the rest of the series, because the very first couple of episodes are all about the sitcom aspect, right? They're all about the sitcom aspect of the show, something that was probably the main draw, or the main thing about the show that most people knew about before we got to see it. Like, all the other shows kind of looked like, okay, like, Falcon, Winter Soldier, that's totally the MCU. Loki, that's the MCU. Like all the other shows, we could look at them and be like, yeah, those look like MCU shows, all right. But WandaVision was different. WandaVision, from the get-go, had this kind of appearance of being a show that was more than just your typical MCU-style show. And obviously there are MCU-style things in here, like, there is action. You do get to see kind of the more typical stuff, but it's definitely not focused on that. It's focused about the relationship of, Wanda and Vision and Westview and all that stuff. That's the main focus, not punching and fighting and lasers and stuff, although we do get some lasers near the end, but again, we'll save that for later. But the first couple of episodes, my thoughts on them, I mean, all things said, now the series is done, the first two episodes came out on January 15th. Before we talk about the show a little more, I want to talk about the way this show was released, because I have not watched regular TV in a long time, like I'm sure it has for many of you. And the thing is, I don't even really watch that much TV, period, like whether it's on actual TV through cable or satellite, or just from streaming services, because honestly, outside of every once in a while resubscribing to Netflix, or in the more recent years Hulu, as the rights moved around, I mainly would just resubscribe just to watch some old episodes of like American Dad or Futurama or something. That would be the only reason why I would really stream or watch anything. That's basically it. I haven't really been keeping up with many shows or anything. In fact, up until I got into the MCU in 2018, I basically didn't watch TV or movies at all. It was just about gaming. But then I got into the MCU in 2018, and now it's become one of the big things for me alongside gaming. So obviously that's why I'm doing this video after all. Or stream, I guess, that will turn into a video after the fact, but whatever. But yeah, so basically, the main reason I'm bringing that up is because, of course, in traditional TV, episodes air basically every week until the season is done. But on streaming, particularly on Netflix, they've become famous for their binge watching, where they will release basically an entire season of a show at once, and then you just binge watch all the episodes. And while that has a benefit, obviously, there are downsides. The most notable which is probably basically the popularity of a show, because if a show comes out, no matter how highly anticipated it is, no matter how critically acclaimed it is, if you release it all at once, people talk about it for a couple of days and then they'll move on, and they won't talk about it until like the next show comes out or whatever. And that is something that, believe it or not, Disney was actually going to let Marvel Studios do. Disney actually told them if you wanted to release all the episodes at once, they were going to let them, which is a little surprising to me because, I mean, okay, I'll get into why Disney wouldn't want them to do that in a second, but it just kind of seems surprising. But Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios ultimately decided that they did not want to just drop all the episodes at once. They wanted to spread them out over, a couple of weeks. And I think that was definitely the right idea. Now, at first, I really wished they just dropped them all at once. But as time progressed, as the fan base grew, as more and more discussions and theories came out, it became very obvious that Marvel Studios made the right call to split up the series by weeks and not just drop them all at once. Because if they dropped them all at once, there would be no speculation or anything. We would just watch the series, and then we would talk about it for a couple of days, and then that would be it. We'd just wait until the next series came out. But instead, by spreading the episodes out across, a month or so, that built up the hype, that built up the discussion, that kept the conversation going. And of course, all kinds of theories came out with this show. That would not have happened if we just had all the episodes at once, because if we had all the episodes at once, then there'd be no point in building any theories, because the theories would have been moot. Because obviously we would have just seen all the episodes anyway, and we would have gotten our answers. Or not gotten our answers, I guess. But you know what I mean, right? So yeah. Well, at first, I really wish they just dropped all the episodes at once. In the end, it was definitely the right move to spread them all out. And I'm sure for basically all the future series going forward, they will be spread out as well. Except for maybe What If. Because What If isn't really anything that's new, so to speak. What If is, of course, animated, unlike the live action of all the other shows. But also, What If also has the distinction of basically just being retellings or altered versions of the existing MCU lore. Instead of Steve being the super soldier, it's Peggy. Or instead of a Star-Lord being kidnapped by Yondu, it's T'Chaka. It's T'Challa. Stuff like that. It's basically just taking what we already have and altering it instead of being a brand new part of the MCU storyline. So they might drop all of those the same day, but all the other series, all the live action stuff, that'll definitely be, week to week, and I definitely think that's the right idea. Although you could argue that maybe in the end, the benefit of all the hype and all the theories maybe backfired on them, depending on how you feel. But again, we'll save that for the end. But so now that I've talked about how I think it's a good thing that they spread out all these episodes instead of dropping them all at once, let's go ahead and talk about the series itself. So yeah, the first couple of episodes. Well, the first couple of episodes, they definitely are very different from the rest of the show. Because again, the main thing that people knew about this show before it came out was that, it's going to be based on like old sitcoms or whatever, and they're going to do all the different eras. And they do that, but as the show progresses, it becomes less and less of a focus. And by the time we get to like the last couple of episodes, it's basically completely gone. Now it's just all about Wanda and Agnes and all that stuff, and the Hex and whatnot. How would I personally, I guess, rank, so to speak, or what are my thoughts on those first couple of episodes? They're definitely different. I'll say that much. I don't think they're great necessarily, but they're definitely good for what they're trying to do. I think that they nail a lot of the the setting. Like the intros are really good, by the way. like, I can't remember the lyrics, but like the songs, right? The intro songs for all the different eras, those are great. Obviously the Agnes song that we get in episode 7 has become kind of a staple. Like all of the songs they have made for this show have been great. And also, I really like the main theme of WandaVision. Like, you know how every MCU movie has, like, their theme? Some of them being classics, like Ant-Man and the Avengers theme. And heck, I think even the Doctor Strange theme is actually really good. And then, of course, we have other ones that are, forgettable and no one really thinks about them. Like, for example, do you know what the Iron Man 2 theme is? The Thor: The Dark World theme? Does anyone know what those themes are? I don't even know what they are. Like, I know what the theme to Iron Man 3 is. I know what the theme to Iron Man 1 is. But I don't know what the theme to Iron Man 2 is. It's probably, like, if we had to make a list of, like, the, quote, most forgettable, like if we ranked the MCU themes by, like, how memorable they are to how unmemorable they are, I think Iron Man 2's theme would be at the bottom, because I legit cannot remember which one that is. I know what Iron Man 1 and 3's themes are. I know what Captain America, the first Avengers theme is. Heck, I even know what the theme to the original Thor is, and I even know what the theme to the Incredible Hulk is. But Iron Man 2, I don't even remember what it is. But anyways, I'm getting off track. The point is, my main point is, the MCU can be kind of hit and miss with its themes. Sometimes they're really good. Like, again, like I think the Ant-Man theme and the Doctor Strange theme are great. Of course, the Avengers theme is a classic. And then we have themes that are, like, they're not bad. Like I don't think any of the themes in the MCU are bad. They're just not super memorable. Again, the Iron Man 2 theme, I can't remember what it is specifically, but I remember it's definitely not a bad theme. It's just not very memorable. WandaVision's theme, I think, is another one that's pretty good. I'm not going to put it quite as high as Ant-Man or Doctor Strange, but it's definitely a solid, like B. Like, I can recognize that theme, and they use the theme in the show itself. It's not just in the credits. They do use it in the show itself at times, and it's really neat when they do. So, like, if I had to, I'd give, like, a solid B, I guess. Like, if the Avengers theme is, like, S, and Ant-Man and Doctor Strange are A, then this one's it's a B. Like, it's a theme I'll be able to recognize probably years from now. It's one I can very much remember. I think it's definitely a solid theme. And again, all of, like, the intro songs for all the different eras, they're pretty good too. But anyways, but yeah, I don't really have a ton to say, honestly, about the first couple episodes. Obviously, because again, most of it is focused on the sitcom aspect, and again, they do that well. But they do sprinkle in aspects of like what's happening elsewhere as well. Like, for example, in the first episode, there is the helicopter, right? The helicopter from, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever. That's just kind of like, that's like, red, but everything else is black and white. And then the drone comes in later, and then there's, like, the radio where, Wu is like, hey, Wanda, where are you? And all that stuff. So obviously they sprinkle in stuff, and plus there's the commercials, like there's the Stark Industries Toastmate 2000. There's the Strucker watches. There's the Hydra soak bath powder. Eventually, the commercials kind of go away in the same vein that the actual sitcom aspect goes away eventually. But yeah. So yeah, I don't have much to say about the first 3 episodes other than they're solid. They're nothing amazing in my opinion, but they're fine. They're solid. They're all right. Then episode 4, this is where I think I really started to, like, kind of get invested in the show, as episode 4. Like, the first 3 episodes were kind of what we were expecting, okay, it's the sitcom stuff, all that stuff. Episode 4, we interrupt this program. This is where we get to see, like, what's going on outside of the Hex for the first time. And this is, of course, where we get to see Sword be introduced to the MCU, as well as we get to see, Monica Rambeau, who returns, this time as an adult from being a kid in Captain Marvel. Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man and the Wasp returns. He's good. Darcy Lewis from the first 2 Thors is back. They definitely have really good chemistry. I know I've seen a lot of people that's like, hey, give them their own spin-off show, Agents of Atlas, all that stuff. And of course, maybe that'll happen down the line, but that'll definitely be something I'd be on board with. I think, or at the very least, like, some specials or some shorts or something. 'Cause remember when Marvel used to do shorts? Like, a funny thing that happened on the way to Thor's hammer, and there was another couple, and there was also the one that, like, redeemed the Mandarin after Iron Man 3, that whole thing. And funny enough, there's actually a similar Iron Man 3 type thing that happens in this series, but again, we'll save that for later. But yeah, remember, I think it's called All Hail the King. It was released, I think, alongside Thor: The Dark World when it came out on Blu-ray. And basically, it redeems the whole, the Mandarin's not really the Mandarin. He's, Trevor Slattery or whatever. That whole thing where, there's a real Mandarin out there. and he's mad that you're trying to impersonate him. And we know they're going to acknowledge this for real, like properly, because it's not just that one short, because of course Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the Ten Rings obviously is connected to the Mandarin, and we already know that we're going to see the Mandarin for real this time in that movie. So, it might have taken, a couple of years, but that's neat. But, once we got to see, Sword and the other characters, that's kind of when I start to get a little more invested. But then it all climaxes, it peaks, in my opinion, at episode 5, which is about, I believe that's the 80s themed episode. We see Sword, bring in a drone, trying to shoot, Wanda down. That clearly doesn't work. And of course, we find out later that they actually used that drone to resurrect Vision in the form of White Vision. But again, we'll save that for later. I forgot about something actually. So in the 4th episode, actually the very beginning of it, after the previously on WandaVision or whatever they have like every episode, we see Monica Rambeau in like a hospital, but she came back from the blip, and then like she goes outside to the hallway, and then everyone's freaking out. It's a complete mess. People keep reappearing, and what's funny is at first I wasn't 100% sure what was happening. But then the second that, she went out into the hallway and I saw people come back, it's like, oh, okay, so this is like after Endgame when everyone comes back because, because of Tony, right? And then it turns out that her mother died of cancer, even though, according to Monica, she was fine the last time she was there. But of course, Monica's been dead for a couple of years, and in that time period, Maria died, and all this crazy stuff because of what happened in Endgame, right? And I think that's really cool, because one thing people have wanted to see ever since the snap happened in Infinity War is they wanted to see, like the aftermath, or they wanted to see the effects of the snap and now the blip. And they kind of did this in Far From Home, and they kind of did this in Endgame, but not really. Okay, in Endgame, it's there for like 5 minutes until they get to like the actual story. And then in Far From Home, they kind of, brush it off in the first couple of minutes as like a joke or whatever. But this is the first time where I think they've really actually shown the kind of chaos that happened from all that stuff. And I think it's really cool that we got to see that. And I hope we get to see more of that in the future. Of course, this series takes place after Endgame, but before Far From Home. In case you didn't know that, this series takes place before Far From Home. In fact, that's never acknowledged strictly. In fact, actually, no. The series is specifically taking place, I think, 3 weeks after Endgame, if I remember correctly. I think it's like 3 weeks after the events of Endgame, but before Far From Home. Even though Far From Home takes place after Endgame, but it takes place at a later point than WandaVision. And we kind of can find out how this is somewhat aligned at the end, but again, I'll save that for later. But on to episode 5, though. Episode 5 is definitely where I think the series at least peaks for me. Because this, of course, was the introduction of a certain Maximoff that has been missing in the MCU for the last 5 or 6 years. And everyone flipped the hell out. Because, of course, as we all know by now, and of course, again, we'll get to what happened with this in the end later. Because I want to save that for later, because of course this was addressed in the finale. But in this episode, at the very end, we get the drop. Evan Peters' Quicksilver is back, but playing the MCU version of Quicksilver, but he was acting weird. And of course, we would eventually find out later that he was being controlled by Agnes and all that stuff. And again, we'll get to like what the real truth behind Evan Peters' character is later. But in that moment, ignoring what happens in the future episodes, just in that moment, this is where theories for the series exploded. Like, holy crap, they're bringing back the X-Men world, the multiverse, And I'm not gonna lie, I got really excited because obviously everyone wants to see the multiverse. Everyone wants to see all these characters come in, and we already know that there was gonna be some tie-in to the multiverse anyway. Because, of course, from what we heard from Kevin Feige, it's like there's going to be kind of this like connection between WandaVision, Doctor Strange, and the at the time Spider-Man 3. But of course, now we know it's called Spider-Man No Way Home, and we know for a fact that Wanda is in Doctor Strange, but more importantly, we know it hasn't been officially 100% by Marvel Studios confirmed, but it's all but confirmed. We all know it. It's been talked about so many times from so many sources. We know that Spider-Man No Way Home is going to have Tobey and Andrew and Emma Stone and Kirsten Dunst, and we already know officially that we're going to get Doc Ock and Electro and all the Spider-Man characters, all the Spider-Man characters from the different universes. The only one that hasn't really been talked about too much is Tom Hardy's Venom. Personally, I don't think he's going to be in it. I think we will see him eventually, but I don't think he's going to be in No Way Home. But everyone else is all but confirmed to be in there, at least in some shape, way, or form. How much screen time they get or whatever is a topic for another day. And this isn't a discussion about No Way Home, so I'll save that for some other time anyway. But the point is, we know that there's multiverse stuff happening, and he said that WandaVision is going to connect to Doctor Strange, so therefore it's possible to assume that Evan Peters coming back to play quote-unquote Quicksilver, and they even acknowledge this in the show because Darcy, of course, says she recast Pietro, and also in the subtitles, sorry, not the subtitles, the audio description, because basically, okay, you know how there's subtitles, right? Well, there is a audio description track on Disney Plus that's basically just the regular audio, but it also has someone that's like, oh, Wanda opened the door. Wanda is talking to Vision. Wanda, it describes what's happening in the episode. In it literally says, it's Pietro from the Fox, okay, not the Fox films. They wouldn't acknowledge Fox, of course, but they say this is Quicksilver from the X-Men films. They literally say it in the audio description. Now, to be fair, as people even at the time pointed out, just because they say that, it doesn't necessarily mean that 100% is him. Because the audio description is just supposed to say what the audience is going to perceive it to be. And of course, from the audience perspective, we all know that's supposed to be X-Men Quicksilver, so that's why they say X-Men Quicksilver. But yeah, the point is, this was the catalyst. This is the thing that I think pushed WandaVision to be as big as it was. Obviously, it was going to be somewhat popular. It's an MCU show, after all, and a proper MCU show, unlike the Netflix stuff and whatnot. But this right here, I think, is what made the popularity of this show explode, because all the theories and the hype around the multiverse and what's going to be happening and all that stuff. And then episode 6 happens. And it's like the episodes 1 through 3 or 1 through 4, I should say. I mean, of course, all of them have had the point is, this one takes place in the early 2000s in a very, very obvious spoof of Malcolm in the Middle, and this is the first time we get to really see Evan Peters' Quicksilver in action. And one thing I noticed immediately is that it very much looks like they were trying to portray him not as the X-Men Quicksilver straight up, but more as it's the MCU Quicksilver in Evan Peters' body or something. Because what I'm trying to say is, for example, when Evan Peters' Quicksilver moves, it's the same effect as when Aaron Taylor Johnson did it in Age of Ultron, not the way it was done in the Fox movies. And of course, they could have just done that for the sake of consistency, because he's supposed to be quote-unquote Pietro from the MCU anyway, but yeah. And all that stuff. We also find out in the episode that, of course, oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, but oh yeah, Wanda has kids. Wanda and Vision have kids, Tommy and Billy, and in episode 6, they actually get their powers. One of them, I forget which one gets which, but actually, okay, no. Billy has Wanda's kind of magic powers, but Tommy has the super speed of Quicksilver, and they acknowledge this in the show a couple of times, and that's pretty neat. But then there's stuff Vision, the further out into the town he goes, the weirder it looks and everything. And then of course there's that sequence at the end where Vision tries to break out of the hex, but he can't do it because he can't exist outside the hex, because he's a figment of Wanda's, he's Wanda's creation, and he can only exist within the hex. So, that whole scene where, he was slowly being disintegrated, and then of course Wanda finds out, and then, she makes the hex bigger so he can still live. So, that all happens. Then we get to episode 7. Episode 7 is we get to see more of. So yeah, we get okay, this one actually, strangely enough, don't remember a ton of. Of all the episodes, this is probably the one I can remember the least about. But the thing I know about the very least is that at the very end we get the quote-unquote surprise reveal that Agnes is Agatha Harkness. No, really? Yeah, also, and of course we get that, that song that became really popular at the end, it was Agatha all along, that whole thing. Oh yeah, and then we find out that, of course, she's the one that was causing all of the problems, basically, in the entire show up until this point. We even found out that they killed Sparky. So, there's that, too. So, here's another thing, too. So, this is another kind of key right here in the whole, like, who is Pietro and what is he really? Is the whole thing with... So, we found out that, okay, yes, Pietro, or quote-unquote Pietro, is being controlled by Agnes. But... that still didn't mean necessarily that, but that still didn't answer all the questions. Like, okay, did she pull him from the X-Men universe, or is he just a resident of the town that she's controlling like everyone else? Now, of course, we know what the answer to that is, but again, I will tell you that when we get to the end. So yeah, we got the reveal of Agatha, and yeah, no one's really surprised about that. But okay, neat. We saw now of course a lot of people were speculating, Mephisto and stuff like that, and I'm actually gonna say I'm not gonna save this part for the end because I could just say it right now. Mephisto and Nightmare, all that stuff doesn't happen. It never happens. So there's that, which is kind of something that's kind of interesting about the episode when you think about it. But yeah. Also, actually, talking about the Sword, what's going on with Sword, I believe, yeah, in episode 7, yeah, that's the one where, like, they have, like, that space vehicle, and Monica tries to break into the Hex, but it doesn't work, and the vehicle, like, kind of changes, like, halfway and stuff, and it's kind of neat. But, yeah, and then episode 8 is all about Wanda and Agatha and, like, Wanda's past and stuff like that. It's all about that. And, of course, I was expecting, okay, so, like, once I figured out in the episode, okay, this is what they're doing, then, of course, we found out, okay, they show the whole thing of, like, Wanda and, Pietro, in, like, Sokovia with their parents. And, of course, and as that whole scene is playing out, I'm just waiting. Because, of course, we know from Age of Ultron that their parents were killed by a Stark Industries bomb. So I'm just waiting for it, because it's like, they're obviously going to show it, right? They're obviously going to show it, so I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. But I'll admit, even though I obviously knew it was going to happen, we all knew the bomb was going to happen, even it caught me off guard when it happened. It was so sudden. Like, I was kind of expecting something not, like, I was maybe expecting, like, kind of like I was kind of expecting basically a sound, like they might hear a sound and then all of a sudden the bomb goes off or something. But no, it literally just happens. Like, they're watching TV and it's all innocent, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just comes in and wrecks everything. And then, of course, they pan to the Stark Industries logo, and then, of course, everyone's like, hey, look, it's the thing from Age of Ultron. So all that stuff. And then Wanda tries to get rid of the bomb, but then she's pulled back because that never really happens and stuff like that. And then we see, like, a scene of, like, the mines, like, where she's, like, a quote, like, volunteer and everything from, like, from the end of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, where they were first introduced. And then we see, like, her trying to, like, get the Mind Stone or something like that. Again, I don't completely remember. I know it was, like, the last episode before this one, but... but the point is, the main takeaway from all that is that we see, like, the Scarlet Witch for the first time. Like, not some Halloween costume. Like, we actually get to see a little bit of it. And, of course, as we would find out later, that would actually become a thing that would really happen. And then, so basically, long story short, we got, Wanda and Agatha, kind of doing their thing. And then in the post-credit scene, I probably should have mentioned the post-credit scene, by the way. So all up until episode 7, there were no post-credit scenes. The episode just would end, and that would basically be it. But starting with episode 7, they included mid-credit scenes. And in the final episode, we got both a mid-credit and a post-credit scene, which I will talk about when we get to it. The mid-credit scene for the 7th episode is basically Monica getting their way to like one of the houses, and then like she's trying like basically like like Agatha's house, or as we would find out later, it'd be someone else's house. But again, I'll talk about that when we get to it. And then all of a sudden Pietro shows up, and then it kind of cuts off. And then episode 8, we see Sword and we see Hayward. I haven't mentioned. Oh yeah, I completely forgot about the whole scene where Wanda, breaks into to Sword and steals Vision's body. Well, we actually found out that it's not really what happened. Actually, she just went there, and she didn't actually steal the body. She just kind of went off. She basically she went into Sword to find his body, and then like she didn't actually end up taking it. And then she ended up going to Westview. She went to where their house would have been, but there's not actually anything there. It's just a foundation. And then, through all her grief, because, Vision's gone, she just kind of, like, explodes into, like, anger, and all of the, and then all of, her red magic starts flowing everywhere, and then that's how the hex is created, and everything becomes black and white, and all that stuff. That's how the series begins, basically. But, we find out in a mid-credit scene in episode 8, that actually they actually used Vision's like remains to build a new white body for him, which of course would come into play in the final episode, the one that just came out today, which of course is the series finale. Literally, the episode's actually called the series finale. I'm not joking. And this episode is definitely going to be a divisive one, because if I haven't said it already, this episode does more or less answer a lot of the questions people have wanted. The problem is they're not going to be the answers people like, or what people were expecting to happen doesn't really happen. So, yeah. So, obviously, I've made it very clear that everything is spoiler, but yeah, obviously, spoilers, especially for this part. So, the episode begins with Wanda trying to fight off, Agnes, and then all of a sudden, White Vision shows up, and then the actual Vision, which isn't actually Vision proper, it's the reconstruction of Vision that can't escape the hex, all that stuff. And then, they're fighting and whatnot, and then we find out that actually the White Vision, which is reconstructed from the Vision's remains, actually does have all of Vision's memories. Because, of course, up until this point, the quote-unquote real Vision, the one that's been living with Wanda and the kids, so to speak, he can't remember anything before Westview. There was even that great scene, at the end of the 5th episode before Pietro came in, where, he and Wanda were arguing, and it was really good. I think Paul Bettany did a great job, emoting in that little argument scene. Yeah, he can't remember. I can't remember my life before Westview. Stop lying to me. I think that was done really well. When we find out that even though the reconstruction of Vision can't remember anything before Westview, the White Vision, which again is reconstructed from the remains of Vision himself, he actually can't remember anything before a certain point anyway, but he has the memories of Vision inside him, and then the false Vision, so to speak, or whatever, again, the reconstruction, whatever. I'm just gonna call him False Vision from here on out. False Vision actually brings back White Vision's memories, and then it turns out White Vision is actually Vision, and then he kind of flies off, and we never see him again, which is like really weird. I've seen some people speculate that maybe he remerged with the false Vision, so at the very end of the episode, when Vision, goes away, that really is Vision properly going away or something, but yeah. So we go through all of that, and, Agnes eventually, basically defeated, and then, actually, I forgot about this. So basically, like, Agnes is, like, stealing Wanda's, like, power, and it's, like, draining her. And then there's this whole scene, and there's another scene that happens. But basically, long story short, because again, you've all seen the episode. I'm just kind of recapping it a little because I kind of feel like I need to. Point is, we find out that that line from the end of the 8th episode where it's like, oh, you're not just a witch, you're the Scarlet Witch or whatever. That whole name drop. Well, in the series finale, she becomes the Scarlet Witch. It's not just Wanda anymore. It's like actually the Scarlet Witch with the costume and everything. Again, not the Halloween costume, not just a subtle like she actually becomes the Scarlet Witch. And the scene I think was actually pretty solid. Like they had like the hex, had the spells and everything, and there was the book. Like I think that was pretty neat. Nothing mind blowing, granted, but it was neat. It was neat. And obviously getting to see, Scarlet Witch's costume properly for the first time in the MCU was really cool. And as far as we can tell, she's going to have that costume for at least for the foreseeable future. But yeah, basically in the end, it turns out, so basically Wanda is tries to get rid of the hex at one point. But of course, as we know at this point, both False Vision and her kids are constructions of the hex and of her, so if she gets rid of the hex, they go away. And we have this scene where, both her kids and the Vision are, slowly disintegrating, and Agnes is like, so what do you want to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to pick, I forgot what the other option was. It's going to be, you're going to pick this, or you're going to pick your family. And of course, she's going to pick her family, and she stops, deconstructing the hex, and it reforms. But in that process, Sword actually is able to get through. But of course, Wanda, actually not even Wanda, actually her kids and Monica are able to deal with them. Actually, so we get to see a little more of the kids' powers actually in this last episode. We get to see again, I want to say it's Billy is the one that's okay. Sorry, so I can't remember which one has which powers. I'm sorry. Which one was it? Which one was it? Okay, no. Tommy is the one that's fast. Billy is the one that is. No, Jimmy is Jimmy Woo. Yes. Sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry that I'm getting everything screwed up again. This is kind of a live show, so I'm not going to be as constructive as I would normally be. Point is, one of the kids, they show off their speed, and it's cool. There's even subtle I assume they're references. They might not be, but I assume they're references to the classic time in the bottle scene from Days of Future Past, because we see Tommy steal one of of Sword's hats, Quicksilver does, in the movie, and then also we have a scene of Monica where Hayward tries to shoot her. But the bullets end up going through her, and then one of the kids stops the bullets and stuff. I mean, that probably has nothing to do with the time in the bottle scene, but I kind of like to see it as a little reference, by itself, I wouldn't see it as a reference, but considering that we have Evan Peters here at all, it's kind of I can buy that's maybe a reference. But in the end, Agatha is defeated. She actually ends up becoming one of the residents of Westview once the hex is destroyed and Westview goes back to being a normal town again. And Wanda, or I guess the Scarlet Witch now, I'm just going to keep calling her Wanda for the sake of consistency. And then Wanda says, because Agatha says something about, you have no idea what you've done. You're going to need me. And then, Wanda says, well, if I ever need you, I'll know where to find you. That right there is basically confirmation that we're going to see her again. How in the other movies, how Cap will say, I know someone, or Tony will say, I know someone, or, the Falcon will say, I know someone, and then they cut to wherever and they cut to a different location and they get the other character. They're going to do that again at some point in a future movie where it's they're going to be in a pickle, and then Wanda's going to say, I know someone, cut to Westview, cut to Agnes. They are good. That is 100% a setup for something that'll happen in the future. I mean, come on. They literally basically say so. But yeah, so Agnes becomes she basically just becomes one of the townspeople, and then, Monica, and then the rest of the Jimmy Woo and crew show up, and then, Wanda ends up, flying away, and that's basically the end of the series. Except not really, because we have not one, but two post-credit scenes. So the first one, the mid-credit scene, Monica and Jimmy Woo are talking for a bit, and then someone says, hey, Monica, we need you over at the theater. And she goes into the theater, and then it turns out the person that was asking her about, hey, come to the theater, it turns out she's actually a Skrull, and that, apparently, I'm a friend of someone that was a friend of your mom's, which was a reference to, at first, I was, not sure who they were referencing at first. I knew it wasn't Captain Marvel, because the person said, he needs your help, or he needs you, not she, so it wasn't Captain Marvel. But I also figured at this point that it wouldn't be Doctor Strange, because what does Doctor Strange have to do with, Monica and all that stuff. And then, of course, it hits me later on, oh, wait, that's supposed to be Nick Fury, because, of course, Nick Fury knew Monica and Captain Marvel and all that stuff. Okay, never mind. And then, of course, there's that scene from Far From Home, right, where, like, Fury is up in, like, up in space with the Skrulls. So that's clearly referencing that, right? Which means that, so basically that's what that's referencing, and then it just kind of says, yeah, we need your help or whatever, and then, it just kind of cuts away to the rest of the credits. But wait, there's one more, because we get what, at least from someone has read so many rumors, a very clickbait, like this is, like, clickbaity is not the right word, because obviously it's a show, not a YouTube video, but like a very, for lack of a better term, clickbaity end credit scene where they like pan through like the forest and there's like a lone log cabin and stuff, and it's like, I've seen so many videos that have talked about, because of course, again, we'll talk about all the theories and stuff and what happened to them in a second, because I'm almost ready to talk about that. But the way that started, I was like, are they actually doing this? Are they actually doing this? Are they actually doing this? There's no way. And then, of course, it turns out, no, they aren't doing what I think they were doing. But then we see, Wanda's just kind of sitting there in the middle of nowhere. She's like drinking tea or whatever. And then it pans to like the bedroom or whatever. And we see like the Scarlet Witch, or, Wanda, like proper. And she's like looking through, like, I forget what the name of the book is. I'm sorry. Like, I forget what the name of the book actually is called. But I'm just going to call it the book, because you know what I'm talking about, right? She's going through the book. And then all of a sudden, she hears like her kids, scream for help. And then, and then boom, that's the end of that scene. So obviously that implies that Wanda is trying to, basically, it sounds like she's trying to find a way to bring her kids back. Because her kids and Vision went away when the Hex went away. And that scene was also done really well, by the way. That scene where like they were tucking the kids in and all that stuff, that was a good scene. That was definitely a good scene. Like that, and like Wanda and Vision's final kind of moments together. Like that was definitely a good scene, but yeah. So obviously, it's definitely implying that she's going to try and bring her kids and probably by extension Vision back. But remember how I was talking about White Vision earlier and how he disappears for the rest of the episode? Well, maybe, like, see, that's the thing. It's like, would she try to bring back a Vision? Because now we got this White Vision, but she doesn't know that White Vision is actually Vision. Like, it's weird. We don't really know what's going to be going on with that yet. Obviously, that's going to be saved for, Doctor Strange or some future project in, well, the future. So yeah, that's kind of the whole series right there. That's basically all the series. And now that we've talked about all that, let's go ahead and talk about all the things that did and did not happen. Because again, as I said before, your enjoyment of the series as a whole is going to be, I think, very much dependent on how much you bought into the theories everyone was talking about. And don't get me wrong, at first, I kind of bought into them. But even as soon as episode 6, I kind of backed off on that. And as the show went on, it was pretty clear to me they were not going to go in that direction, really. Like, maybe they'd talk about Pietro, and again, they did talk about him. Well, again, we'll get to that in a second, but I kind of figured outside of Pietro being explained, they weren't really going to talk about any of the X-Men mutants, because I saw people that were like, they're going to have Magneto or Professor X or something at the very end. And actually, that's another thing. Look, before we even talk about any of that, before we talk about any of the stuff that did or did not happen, the whole thing of the Luke Skywalker cameo or Paul Bettany being like, someone I've always wanted to work with. As far as I'm aware of, Evan Peters in episode 5 was not the quote Luke Skywalker cameo. And I know that technically speaking, she didn't really say Luke Skywalker. I know there's more to it than just that, but oh yeah, actually, you know what? Let's forget this. Let's forget the Luke Skywalker cameo. Let's forget that entire thing. Let's just talk about Paul Bettany, where he was like, there's gonna be a big something. It's an actor I've always wanted to work with, and from that, people assumed it had to be something new and not just like Doctor Strange or whatever, because of course he's worked with Doctor Strange on like the Avengers movies and stuff. So it's kind of, or Benedict Cumberbatch, I should say, on the other movies. So it couldn't have been that, right? And basically, there was no big cameo. There was no Doctor Strange, no Magneto, no nothing. We didn't get any of that, which is because it's weird, because unlike the other ones, which were just fan-made theories, this is something that was basically confirmed. We knew there was going to be something big in the end ish or something, and it didn't really happen. So everyone's kind of concluded that was probably just Paul Bettany trolling us. And yeah, it probably was. Because it's like, oh, well, it turns out that it's actually him. Because people are assuming he meant White Vision as like a joke or something. But I don't know. But yeah, but I guess what my main point is, yeah, all those theories about Mephisto, Nightmare, the mutants, the X gene, you know, Professor X, Magneto, Reed Richards, the Fantastic Four, because of that one thing Monica said in episode 4 or whatever. None of that stuff happened. None of those theories happened. And honestly, that doesn't really annoy me that much. Because by the time we got to the last episode, I kind of was off of that bandwagon anyway. The one thing, though, that does kind of annoy me a little, and I'm definitely not the only one here. I don't hate it. I'm just kind of like a little disappointed. If there was going to be one multiverse thing I wanted addressed, I wanted Peter to actually be Peter from the Fox X-Men world. I wanted Pietro to actually be Pietro. Even if he was under his control or whatever, or under, you know, Agnes's control or whatever. I still wanted that to, in the end, I still wanted that to be him, or at least be pulled from that universe. Turns out, no, because that whole thing, people have been wondering about who's Ralph, right? Turns out, Pietro was Ralph, and he was just another citizen of Westview that Agnes took control over. It has nothing to do with the multiverse whatsoever. And I'm not mad, I'm just like... okay, even though I didn't think any of that other I didn't think we were gonna get Magneto or Reed Richards or any of that stuff, but I was under the belief that that really was the Fox X-Men Quicksilver. Even if it wasn't 100% the same, I was under the strong belief that there was a connection. There was at least a connection between him and the Fox X-Men world. I was certain, even after all of that there was a connection. Turns out, nope. He's just Ralph, who just happened to be a regular citizen that Agnes took over. And Agnes's house this whole time was actually Peter's house, or Ralph's house, I should say. So that kind of, yeah. Again, okay, not having anything super mind-blowing like Reed Richards or Magneto, that's fine. Like, heck, not even having Doctor Strange, fine. But Pietro not really being Pietro in the end, like, okay. If they didn't have fake Pietro be Evan Peters, none of this would have happened, right? If it was just Aaron Taylor Johnson or literally any other random actor, none of this would have happened. People wouldn't have built up all of this, because all of this X-Men stuff, all this mutant stuff, was very much relying on the fact that Evan Peters was there. And that, well, it's Evan Peters, they didn't just pick him for no reason. They clearly are there's clearly gotta be something behind it, besides just being a wink and a nod. And it turns out it is just a wink and a nod. That, hey, look, it's the other X-Men, quote unquote, except, or the other Pietro, quote unquote, except not really. So yeah, that, like, okay, so even though I'm not disappointed that we didn't get anything like super crazy in the finale, I'm not gonna lie, I am kind of disappointed that Pietro isn't actually the Fox X-Men Pietro, or at least doesn't have some connection. Now, for all we know, this will end up being like the Mandarin, Iron Man 3, where, you know, at first, you know, it turns out, oh, no, it's actually something different. But then down the line, you know, they change it. Again, like, you know, I've actually seen a lot of people compare this Pietro reveal to actually the Iron Man 3 reveal of the Mandarin, where it's actually Trevor Slattery and he's not really the Mandarin. And in a way that actually is kind of true, because, okay, here's my opinion. Now, I didn't get into the MCU until 2018, so so like the whole Iron Man 3 Mandarin thing didn't matter to me. I think Iron Man 3 is a good movie. Like, it's not as good, like, I'm in the camp that's like, it's a good movie, not as good as the first one, but it's definitely a good one and better than Iron Man 2, right? I'm in that camp. I never had a problem with the Mandarin twist because I didn't know that there was supposed to be a Mandarin twist, because I didn't know about the Mandarin at that time and all that stuff, right? This time is different because I knew about the Fox X-Men stuff. I knew Evan Peters is from that universe. I knew all that stuff. And we were all assuming that there was going to be a connection, and then it turns out there wasn't one. But to Marvel's credit, unlike the Mandarin, where they built up the Mandarin to actually be the Mandarin, Marvel never actually built up Evan Peters to actually be Evan Peters. The fan base did. That's like the fan base. We're the ones that built up Evan Peters to be the Fox X-Men version. Marvel never implied that. The only time they ever acknowledged it was just saying, hey, he looks like the one from the X-Men films. That's it. That's all that they did. They never actually implied in the show itself that he might have some connection. We just all made that up and assumed that was going to be the case. And obviously it turns out, no, it isn't. So, yeah. Overall, though, my thoughts on the finale, I think, crazy theories and predictions aside, it was a solid ending. Nothing crazy, nothing super special, but, you know, for what it was, I had no problems with it. And as a whole, yeah, WandaVision, well, I feel like, for me, the peak was Evan Peters being revealed in episode 5. You know, it's a good show. Like, obviously, if you haven't seen it already, you know, obviously, if you're into the MCU, obviously, if you haven't seen it already, then I definitely recommend checking it out now that all the episodes are done. And yeah, so, yeah, WandaVision. It's a series that definitely had a little bit of a roller coaster, you know, starting off kind of with just the sitcom stuff, and then we get into Sword, and we get in, you know, the Vision, and all what's going on with that. And then we end with, you know, Evan Peters isn't really Evan Peters, and there really is no, you know, no X-Men connection, and there really is no Doctor Strange, and there really is none of that stuff. But that doesn't mean we don't have some threads to go off of, because again, they imply something's going to happen with Monica and Nick Fury. We know that there's something that's going to be happening with Wanda's kids, and, you know, seeing if they're going to get brought back, and yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's really all I have to say. So, I have no idea how long this video is going to end up actually being, because of course this is a stream at first, and I'm gonna cut down the whole intro part of this and just have it so it's actually the discussion itself in the end. But yeah, so that's WandaVision. So if I had to rank WandaVision by like a number, I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10. I guess, like, you know, it's solid. It's nothing super amazing in my opinion. Like, again, as the series is, not what I want to be, as what the series is. You know, again, ignoring all the crazy theories and stuff, as it is. It's a solid show that I definitely recommend watching if you haven't seen it already. But not super high. You know, it's like a B-. You know, it's solid. It's good, but not super amazing. You know, it's not Winter Soldier or anything like that. But, you know, it's a good show, and I think it was definitely a good introduction to the MCU world on Disney+. And, of course, in a couple of weeks, we're going to see the Fallout, oh my god, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier premiere on March 19th. And I will, of course, be doing a thoughts on video for that as well. But once again, I will not be doing that until the series concludes. I believe at the end of April is when it will be concluding, but we'll see. So yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of WandaVision? Did you think that the finale was underwhelming? Did you think it was good? What did you think of the series as a whole? Were you on board the Pietro, X-Men, all that stuff theories, or were you very much in the camp of, yeah, that's not happening? And are you excited for Falcon and the Winter Soldier? All that stuff. So yeah, with that being said, yeah, that's really all I have to say. So yeah, this is Logan589XP. And I'll see you guys next time.